After all.
You are listening to Radical Sacred, a podcast centered around spirituality, nature, and connection.
I'm Phil Dickey, pastor, eco-spiritualist, activist, friend of trees, and a small-town Missourian living in the heart of Dallas.
And I'm Jenny Mislin, spiritual director, teacher, seeker, bird watcher, and a homesick Texan living in France.
Join us now as we live the questions, learn from open-hearted conversations, and explore our own deep and sacred roots.
How the Worst Day of My Life Became the Best by Andrea Gibson. When I realized the storm was inevitable, I made it my medicine. Took 2 snowflakes on the tongue in the morning, 2 snowflakes on the tongue by noon. There were no side effects, only sound effects. Reverb added to my lifespan, an echo that asks, what part of your life's record is skipping? What wound is on repeat? Have you done everything you can to break out of that groove? By nighttime, I was intimate with the difference between tying my laces and tuning the string section of my shoes. Made a symphony of walking away from everything that did not want my life to sing. Felt a love for myself so consistent, metronomes tried to copyright my heartbeat. Finally understood I am the conductor of my own life and will be even after I die. I, like the trees, will decide what I become. Porch swing, church pew, an envelope that must be licked to be closed. Kinky choice, but I didn't close. I opened and opened until I could imagine that the pain was a sensation of my spirit not breaking, and my mind was a parachute that could always open in time. That I could wear my heart on my sleeve and never grow out of that shirt. That every falling leaf is a tiny kite with a string too small to see, held by the part of me in charge of making beauty out of grief. Amen.
Amen. Wow, friends, welcome to this episode of Radical Sacred. We are just so grateful and fortunate to have Paldrom Collins, who is the author of Girl in a Box, Seeking Enlightenment as a Tibetan Buddhist Nun. So if you're watching the YouTube version, you can, here's the what the book looks like here, but it's a memoir of monastic life, spiritual longing, and what remains when the path changes. Paldrom spent 5 years in traditional Tibetan Buddhist Monastery and retreat center, an experience that continues to shape her work now. She also offers spiritual direction and writes and speaks about spiritual life, contemplation, and finding refuge in ordinary experiences. She currently lives with her husband in California's San Francisco Bay Area, and we got to know Paldrom through our friend Kelly DeChant Hughes. So Kelly, thank you once again for connecting us to wonderful people. And Paldrom, we're just so excited that you're here. Any aspect of biography that you'd like to add to what I just shared?
I think that kind of sums it up pretty well.
Nailed it, huh?
Yeah.
Well,
I think I might have written that at some point.
You wrote that down at some point, so no wonder it fits so well.
Yeah.
Well, we would just love to know a brief little bit here about kind of the moment you decided that this was a book, right? That your life experiences were worthy of going into a book, and it's a journey in and of itself, right? There's a lot of journey here. So what made you decide to turn it into a book?
What a great question. I mean, I've actually been pondering that. and the real answer is I don't know. And then the second answer is I couldn't help it. I just had to do it. It was like I had to do it. So there's something about and I think that that's part of what the book is about really being true to your path, no matter what that might look like, even though it might take you to some crazy places. And then leaving that path as needed. Yeah, basically I wrote the book because I had to. And I can say a little more too, that people, I think, wonder about, like Tibetan Buddhism is kind of this mystical, like secretive Shangri-La thing, there in the Himalayas, and hidden teachings. And so part of why I wanted to write it is so people could have a little glimpse, at least my glimpse, into what that world is like.
Oh, I love your answer to that. Why did you write the book? I don't know. And I did it because I had to. I think that's that's really at the heart of anything that's really true to you. We can't always put into words why we have to do something. We just know that we have to do it. We know that we have to do it. Have you always felt like a seeker? Has that always been something? And will you talk to us about when the first time you became aware that there was more depth to life than I don't know, that there was more depth?
I can't remember when I didn't think that. And I think a part of that is because I'm really sensitive. And you probably know what I'm talking about. So life itself, just the vicissitudes of life itself I feel very deeply. Things, rattle my cage very easily. So I think the seeking had to do with wanting to find a way to navigate that, because it always kind of felt like more than I could bear, but I had to.
So I love Krista Tippett and On Being, and one day I want to be like her when I grow up. But one of the questions
Yeah.
one of the questions she often asks her whenever she's interviewing folks is, what was the religious or spiritual background that you had growing up? Will you share a little bit about that, and then how that led to this journey of Tibetan Buddhism?
Oh, yeah. So I started out, I was in Oklahoma, and my parents took us to a Baptist church. And there was one Sunday, somehow I was at church in the sanctuary by myself. I don't know how that quite happened. And the preacher was preaching and saying, come, be saved. And so I walked up the aisle, and then I got baptized the next Wednesday, dunked in the water. And I was like thinking I would something, I'd have some kind of experience, and I didn't. I was just wet, and then you have the little white gown on, and so my parents kind of wandered from church to church. And then when I was in high school, my mother started studying theosophy with a couple of the neighbors. So I kind of got this kind of introduction to some alternative sort of ways of thinking. So then I really wanted to understand, like, I wanted to understand the Bible. I wanted to understand what Jesus was talking about. And the answers I was getting inside of any kind of church I went to just weren't doing it. They weren't getting me there. Well, through people that I knew, I ended up at a Tibetan Buddhist monastery, visiting a friend of mine, and there we have the book. Does that kind of answer the question? Yeah.
Yeah, I love the meandering nature of following your true path, and how sometimes it meanders. It's hopefully, if you're living your life according to your own inner knowing, it's going to meander. Hopefully it's not just a straight path. But I love in chapter 1 when you talk about becoming findable. You're reading a lot of books, and one of the authors says to live simply and that a teacher will find you. Will you talk to us about becoming findable, both to a teacher and to yourself?
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't know what it would mean to become findable. So, I'd started doing meditation, trying to meditate. I was like really, really bad at it. Like I couldn't, like the worst. I was not a natural. I was not a natural contemplative. Let me say that. Uh, I'm kind of wild. I'm a little, wiry. So what it said in that book, that was Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, which, was kind of a big deal at the time. Especially kind of still is in a way. And so his instruction that he received was to live your life. And so I decided that I would live my life the best I could. And at that point, I'd done theater in high school, and I'd stopped doing that when I got married because my husband didn't like it. And so I thought, well, that was a thread that was unfinished. So I went back and started doing theater again. And it was really through theater that I met Dan, the guy that I talked about in the book. Completely fell in love with him. And he was a teacher. And through him, he introduced me to a lot of different teachers. He talked about a lot of different teachers. So my being findable was about following, really, it's what you said, about really following my heart, following like what I yearned to do. And what I've found in doing that is mostly those end up becoming like there is like kind of checking off, not that, not that. And then it just ends up being there is no that. There is no that there.
I love that you said you weren't like a natural to contemplation. It was not easy for you. So would love to hear about, like, again, grew up Baptist, had this baptism experience that wasn't really that much of an experience other than just kidding. I love the way you put that. That's amazing. But then did you have other experiential things that were really influential for you? And then how is it that you then adopted a sense of contemplation or a contemplative approach to life? Because that's a big switch, and a lot of people, I think, really do struggle with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the Tibetans made me.
That's one way. If you're just forced into it, then that's one path, huh?
Well, I mean, that's part of what I say is like, you don't need to go to a monastery unless you do. And I did. I needed to be in boot camp. I needed that extreme discipline. And the first practice of the preliminary practices is prostrations. And that is a very, very physical practice. You're like going down on the ground and standing up again over and over and over again. And that, at least for me, started to tame my system, my whole nervous system, my whole.
So a somatic expression was really what helped to, like, having something with your body was really helpful for you to get in that next space.
Yeah, and what I understand now is I think coming through the body, I think is really actually fundamental. That's why things like yoga or walking or whatever, it doesn't matter that's what I see now. It doesn't really matter what it is, but taming the body, because that's the most dense expression of this truth, truth of this of everything that we are, this whole kind of energetic beingness that is this me, this you, is the most dense in the body. So starting there, like we started at the beginning of this talk, where we just came quiet back here, and now I lift weights because that's what brings me into the body, and I walk. So those are my physical practices now.
I love that when you're talking about the prostrations, I was like, good, that's a lot. Like that's a lot. 111,000 of each one. That's a lot. But I think that there's something about repetition and ritual and the body that open you up to your own heart space, to what's trying to flow through you. I walk a lot right now. We live in northern France, and I walk everywhere. I walk to the store. I walk everywhere. And, some days I'm just walking and it's raining and I'm mad and and I'm not paying attention to anything. And then other days I'm walking and something comes to me that wouldn't have if I wasn't out walking. Will you talk to us about ritual and about repetition? Will you talk to us about that?
Yeah. For me, I think I did so much ritual and repetition that now I'm not a big fan of ritual. I mean, if I'm with a group that's doing ritual and repetition, I will totally, surrender and actually enjoy it. But I think I did so much of it that now my practice is more about just bringing myself back to the current moment every moment. But I don't think I would have the capacity to do that had I not been through the boot camp that I needed to. And see, it doesn't that show how trustworthy this heart's desire, this crazy heart's desire, that by doing some theater introduced me to this guy who introduced me to the Tibetans, to my friend, and she went to the Tibetans, and I just like little following breadcrumbs, bit by bit by bit, and who knows where that might bring you. And now I've come back around to being with a group of Christians. So and really investigating the scriptures in a whole new way, and like T.S. Eliot says, returning to where you started and knowing the place for the first time.
So, for those who may not know, and just for my own reminder here, so my pastor of the church that I attend, he and I used to be on staff together at a church in East Dallas over here, and we used to house a Zen center, a Zen Buddhist center at our church. And he told the story this past Sunday because they were talking about like the theme of the series was like frequently asked questions, and one of them that often comes up is this idea of what do we do with other faiths and other religions, and he talked about the whole process of being the pastor of a church that brought in a Zen Buddhist center on the second floor of that building, and how one of the questions somebody asked was, well, are these Buddhist Methodists, like out of their, like, just in a sense of like, well, are they going to be Methodists coming? And he joked and he was like, my initial response would be like, no, but actually, well, yeah, two of them actually are, Methodists do actually worship at this church, but also are Buddhists, and so for those who maybe don't know, can you talk a little bit about that overlap of, it doesn't have to be an overlap, I guess, but the potential overlap of what it means to be Christian and what it means to be Buddhist, and why potentially you can be both of those at the same time?
Oh,
big question. Yeah.
Yeah. A little dangerous question too.
Sure. And I'm sure there's a lot of different answers to it. I just said that, like, that might be my interpretation. Others may disagree with that interpretation.
Yeah, no, I think, well, you know what? I have a poem.
We love poems. We're all for it. Yep.
Okay. I knew that you guys start with poems, so I thought, I'm going to get a poem. Do you know Rumi, right? Rumi.
For sure.
Okay.
Yep.
So this poem is called Only Breath. Not Christian or Jew or Muslim, not Hindu, Buddhist, Sufi, or Zen, not any religion or cultural system. I am not from the east or the west, not out of the ocean or up from the ground, not natural or ethereal, not composed of elements at all. I do not exist, am not an entity in this world or in the next, did not descend from Adam and Eve or any origin story. My place is placeless, a trace of the traceless, neither body or soul. I belong to the beloved, have seen the two worlds as one, and that one call to and know. First, last, outer, inner, only that breath, breathing human being.
Yeah, that's a solid answer there. Be a Rumi poem. That guy knows.
So see, that answers it way better than any words I could say.
Yeah, that guy knows.
So what I am seeing now is this through line of every religion, this through line of connecting. And I think it is through the heart, through compassion. And that compassion is where the connection to God, to the holy, to that which cannot be named, that which cannot be spoken. So like when, like in churches where you praise, like that's it too. Like, so what I see is we can put all different kinds of clothing over this unspeakable, unknowable, ununderstandable truth that is who we are. So maybe that kind of says it.
That says it pretty good. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Geez. There's so many different directions that we could go now. There's so many that we could, but I picked up your book and I started reading it, and a few things came to my mind first off, and I was like, I bet she's a firstborn. Because I am too. And I just saw so much of myself in a lot of where you traveled and went and the struggles that you had. And in chapter 4, you talk, here's a quote from it. It says, I plan to become the best student ever, to achieve star student status, maybe even become Lama's favorite. My go-to strategy for receiving the acceptance I so craved. The tendrils of this well-established tactic had been vining for years. I think that you so beautifully named this thing that we do. That's like, on my worst days, I would trade all of the enlightenment and all the things just to be told that I was good. Like I would trade it all. That yearning leads to us trying to earn love. Will you talk to us about your tactics and how you eventually began to see yourself as worthy of love and belonging just as you were?
That is an ongoing process. I can't say that I have arrived at, I mean, maybe some people do, but I believe that because our fundamental survival wiring is to be able to be in the tribe, to be connected, to be held by the authorities, by our parents, by the whatever, right? That's like that's wired in. So that still can catch me where, something happens and I'm rejected in some way. I mean, even putting this book out, because, there's another author, Janine Roth. She just put out a new book, and she was being interviewed, and she said, every time she publishes a book, it's like she's raising her skirt up and showing off her panties. And Like, isn't that a great line?
That's pretty fantastic. Yeah.
That's a good line. So, this like urge for acceptance, this like just like tell me I'm okay. I still can get caught by that. And what I would say is now what goes on is I can watch it. I can watch it coming. I don't necessarily need to like do anything about it. But that's the place where then my compassion, like, oh, like, oh, honey. And that's also sometimes where I might pray, like, help. Yeah. And that's where like opening to that which is more than this little thing here, this little constellation here, opening and letting that hold me when I'm having those waves of feeling unacceptable. So yeah, that's I don't know, maybe other people get there, but I have not arrived.
Well, you said a journey, right? And like in paths, and I think in Tibetan Buddhism, right? Like you talk about how the different three basic levels of teaching, right? The Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana.
Yeah.
Yeah. Will you share a bit about those and like how those pathways have helped you in the midst of this journey?
Yeah, I was thinking about that when I was thinking about this interview. Like, I wonder if that'll come up. So yeah. So the Hinayana, this is good. The Hinayana is the basis. That's the foundation. That's the rules and regulations. That's the 10 commandments. That's the don't do bad stuff, because it hurts you and hurts other people. Don't do it. And so, and initially I think we need that, like the kid, a baby needs to stay in a playpen or it's going to hurt itself. A kid needs to not, hold its parent's hand before it crosses the street because it's going to get hurt. So we need those kind of don't do bad stuff. So vows are part of the Hinayana. So that doesn't go away, needing that fundamental layer of don't do, don't do the stuff that's going to harm yourself or others and others. Then the Mahayana, and Hinayana, that means the narrow way. So that's also like they talk about blinders on a horse. So like that's like, well, that's like when you take vows. You say, I'm not going to do whatever. I'm not going to kill. I'm not going to steal. Whatever you're going to not do, because you need to be in a container. And I think that's fundamentally necessary. So that's Hinayana, the narrow way. Then there's the Mahayana, which Maha is like great. So Maha is the wide way. And that's where compassion comes in. And to me, that's where Jesus comes in. Love your neighbor as yourself. It's all about love and compassion. And then from the level of the Mahayana, you don't do bad stuff because your heart won't let you. Like, oh, like I can't, like that's where compassion starts to naturally be realized. And I think it's fundamentally a part of who we are, a part of this form that I call it my people house, a part of this like person house that I am. So that's the level of the Mahayana. And then at the level of the Vajrayana, that's where you start to recognize that you're not separate. That's where you start to recognize, that's the hardest one to actually speak about. Vajra means diamond or indestructible. So at the level of the Vajrayana, the rules don't necessarily apply in the same way, because there's a basic understanding of the nature of what that rule is. So a rule might be broken at the level of the Vajrayana, but not really, because there's seeing of the bigger picture. So the Vajrayana is seeing beyond the this and the that, beyond the separate. It's the non-dual that the Mahamudra, the Dzogchen, all of those teachings of how we are all connected. So that kind of says it. I am not a scholar, but that kind of says it.
That's lovely. And it really reminds me, you talked about dualism and non-dualism. That really reminds me of Richard Rohr when he talks about, you start off knowing, like you start off in this with the rules and this is how this works and this is how it's going to be, because that's the only place to start. And then there's the unknowing, like the bottom falls out for you, or you reach the end of the pathway that you're on, and there has to be a shift, there has to be a falling apart. And then there's the re-knowing, where you have the compassion, you have the journey, you have all the things so you can see things differently. I think non-dualism matters so much, and we're in a country right now that's really leaning on dualism. How do you invite people as a spiritual director to look at things non-dualistically, or to start trending in that direction?
I just go right where they are. So I think if I see it non-dualistically, right? So then I'm somehow transmitting that. So if someone is seeing things really dualistically, I'm not going to try to talk them out of it, because I don't think that I don't feel like I'm being respectful. So it's like, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So if someone is in that very more dualistic paradigm, I'm going to talk. I'm going to be right there with them as much as I can, and yet still holding this space. And I find that is very inviting.
So this season, we've talked a lot about reciprocity. This has kind of been the theme for our season. Would love to know, both in your journey that you took on all this, I'm sure that reciprocity came up a lot in the midst of your very long journey that you've had here, but also what you're finding now as you're, again, like you said, kind of moving back into these Christian circles, but also continuing to bring these pathways and journeys with you. What does this term reciprocity mean to you, and where you're finding yourself today?
Oh, I don't know. Like, I don't know the answer to that. So reciprocity in terms of like how there's a give and a take, and everything kind of feeds into the next thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess in some ways it ties in with, and so my mind often will go to some sense of a dualistic understanding of reciprocity, like you said, give and take. Like that almost feels like a dualistic understanding. But like I'm wondering a little bit about what does a non-dualistic understanding of reciprocity look like if we're all interconnected, and like how does that play in maybe?
Well, you know what the image that comes to my mind is like those tree roots where, oh, you had that picture. I watched your episode. Yeah, that picture of the trees, you have it right there. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that.
My heart picture with the leaves are hearts and the roots of the tree are connected to a heart down below. Yeah.
Right. So see, the reciprocity is just the very nature of the interconnectedness. I mean, how it's that reciprocity is the very nature of the truth of this thing that we're doing.
This thing called life, huh?
This thing called life. Yeah. Yep.
One of the threads throughout your book is that knowing beyond knowing, or the golden thread, or the thing that undergirds. You write, poets and mystics have described the luminous knowing of the liminal borderland beyond the naked mind where facts and reason disintegrate and fail. I love that sentence. It was so gorgeous. It was so gorgeous and so right on. Will you talk to us
Who
about
wrote that? That was good.
Like, that was really, that came from me. That was fantastic. Yeah, that's good. Celebrate that.
It's tricky to talk about a lot of the stuff because it's mystery and how do you put words to it, and it's so tricky, but I thought that was such a beautiful way of talking about your knowing beyond knowing. How have you listened to that, and how have you begun to hone your ear throughout your life to your knowing beyond knowing?
Yeah, I like that question. That's great. So now what I'm finding is what I'm experiencing in any moment, in every moment, the intensity of any kind of emotion, getting sad, getting angry, being annoyed, being happy, being overwhelmed, that the very quality of that felt sense I find is like the portal to coming right here and now, just like, okay, and to let that experience of embodiment manifest fully, and letting that in a way like overwhelm me, like just like like falling back into a warm bath, just so to let myself open in that way is how I bring myself to the here and now, and that's where God lives. That's where God is always, right here, right now, like with us right now.
Oh, I love that. It's kind of scary when you start opening up your knowing beyond knowing, because it's gonna trash any of your plans. When you start following that thread, when you don't dismiss those moments where you know that you know that you know, it's oftentimes upending, and that can be scary. It's also really liberating. Will you talk to us about that?
Yeah. But you know what? I think that the resistance itself, the experience of the resistance itself, is part of the opening. So it's like the butterfly. You were talking about butterflies. So it's the deal about the butterfly. So the undoing, there's a time, and like there's a time and a season for everything. That passage.
I think I've read that somewhere before. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not great with the Bible, but I'm working on it.
Totally, yeah. Ecclesiastes is one of my favorite books, so it's good.
Okay, good. I'm working on that. So there's the resistance. It's the resistance, I think, is part of the natural place of the undoing. So I don't think that the resistance is actually wrong or bad, because the resistance has to be there until it's not there anymore. So even opening to the resistance itself is the deal. That's just the deal. But I think we don't like to be in the resistance because it doesn't feel good. We want to be at the place where it's all worked out. But it's like, that's just not the way this game is rigged.
Yeah.
The game is not how this game is rigged, and it feels that way sometimes, right? Like the system is always working against us, and it feels like often maybe I'm projecting here, but we are against you know, like the system is set up not in favor of us to thrive or flourish, and I think it's easy to get caught up in that. And so I'm wondering what are the, maybe it's practices, what are the pieces that help you to disassociate's not the right word, right? But like differentiate maybe from the system, and to be true to that essence.
And you know, I don't think disassociate is so bad, right? Because like disassociate, do not associate, stop associating, right? So I think there's a time and I mean, disassociate has gotten a bad rap lately, in my opinion.
Sure.
So it's kind of like disillusionment gets a bad rap. Like, yes, that's good. Become disillusioned. That is removing the illusion. This is great. So I'm not sure that the system actually is working against us. I think that those the places of difficulty are like the sandpaper that are honing the rough edges. Now, when I'm going through something really hard, I do not like it. Like,
Amen.
hello.
Amen.
Yeah. Really, I do not like it. I want it to be over. I don't want that bad thing to be happening to me. But so far anyway, every bad thing that's happened, when I look back, when I look back at the wake of this ride, it was actually perfect. It was actually everything I needed to bring me right here. And I can't think of anything that I would like say, oh, I wish that never would have happened. Because if it wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't be able to be even sitting here having this conversation with you. I wouldn't have been able to write this book. I wouldn't have been able to write those beautiful words. Not that I even really exactly wrote them. It's like that's kind of an example of when we get out of the way, beautiful things can happen.
Will you talk to us about yearning and creativity and how those two things are inextricably kind of linked? I feel like yearning always brings us to a creative process will you talk to us about that?
Yeah. I mean, yearning, I think yearning is it's like yearning is the desire for God. I mean, to use kind of more, Buddhists would never say that, but because Buddhists can't talk about God.
Right.
Anyway, but since I'm hanging out with the Christians now, I can say
there's space for that now. Yeah. Right.
I can use that word. I can use that word again. So, but God in the most non-dual sort of inconceivable, that which cannot be said, that which cannot be described. So the yearning, I think the yearning is always just like the yearning. That's the yearning for home. That's the yearning. That's the heart opening. And so the creativity is just, I think, just an expression of the bubbling out of all that yearning. And the creativity can look so many ways for each one of us. It might just look like somebody who likes to clean their house, like it doesn't have to look like any certain thing. It might be someone who likes to sing, or whatever that looks like, because when that yearning is honored, that's how this compassion, right, the Mahayana, the Jesus, the Jesus vibe, the love of that that Jesus was walking around with, like just radiating just radiating in a way that was, I'm going to say was, I would say is still this incredible invitation. Oh, yes, open. Yes, let's open too. I can open too. So it's an invitation to this system, your system, all of our systems.
It makes me think like there's so much suffering in the world and so much pain.
Oh.
What do you well, first, yeah, if you have reflections on that, but then what do you feel like yours is to do in response to all the pain and the suffering in the world?
I don't know, but that's the real answer. I don't know. I never know. I'm oh yeah, like the whole this Ebola thing right now is just it's breaking my heart. There's a Tibetan practice called Tonglen, taking and sending, and that practice is taking in all the pain and suffering, just taking it in and just letting it just run through, and then sending out every bit of love and compassion and goodness and joy and any good stuff that you have, just sending that out. So that's that when my heart is breaking, that's where I go.
That was a profound insight for me, because I think when I'd first been introduced to some meditation stuff, it was like, breathe in all the good and breathe out all the bad. And I remember whenever I learned that practice, I was like, well, why would you want to send all the bad back out to the world? Like, breathe in all the good, let it be, like, transform you, and then send it all back out. That to me is a good reciprocity too, right? And it was just such a dynamic change for me to like be thinking about, what am I sending back out into the world, right? Like, I don't know that I can do much about Ebola right now, but like that is something that I can do, right? Like that's a response, like, and it's not nothing. Like that is a response for sure.
Well, and then there's just the little tiny things of each person that I see, just to like be with them, listen, love them. Even, like somebody walking down the street and just say hi and just like, it's like, oh, give you some of this love.
That you talked about Jesus radiating love. And I love that that's something that we can do now, currently, is radiate. Yeah, I love that. Man, I have 800 more questions, Paldrom, but our time is running short. I loved at the end of your memoir when you write, "Yet as I rest in the quiet of my bubbling water fountain, held in the deepest nourishment where the true beloved resides, in the worldless wedding of the known with what can never be known, thoughts and memories quietly ripple. For a moment it seemed they were calling me to a deeper well, a well not yet experienced, but it is not so. The deep well is simply here, always right here. Those thoughts, those seekings for understanding, are just vestiges of my mind, the record player running itself down. The ongoing story of this life, this perfect teacher, this arising of my state of consciousness, this grand mystery continues to unfold. After all, I remain on this ride through time and space in my person, house, body. From the stillness of my brocaded chair, once again, I become aware of the possibility of turning to face the apparent solidity. No, it can't be faced. There is a turning. No, actually, nothing is done. There is only the truth of the shattering stillness of this moment. And in this truth, in this raging quiet, there is the arising, the continual, endless arising of this story, of every story, leading again and again to the truth of never lost, already found, already home." I mean, whoa. That kind of sums it up, huh?
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Will you say a bit about the person, house, body? I love that so much.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. That whole thing is gorgeous. Yes.
Well, the more I can recognize that the, everything that I am perceiving is coming through this perceiving lens, this perceiving mechanism, and that is limited. It just is. And so as long as I am a me, and but I mean that's the game we're playing here, right? You're over there and I'm here, and now we can start to recognize that we're interconnected, and that we're actually all made of God stuff, and we can kind of know that and understand it, but we're going to still always have this experience of the separation. So that's the nature of the person house. So the person house is the container, every single bit of perceiving mechanism.
Okay. Where can people find your work, and what do you have coming up that you would like for folks to know about?
Well, my website. I have a website, paldrom.com. So anything that I would have, I'm not a hugely public person, so.
Oh, yeah.
So it really does feel like that skirt going up and when you wrote that book, huh?
Really, yes. We've even doing this, like, okay.
Sure, yeah. Thank you for that vulnerability and that willingness to step out here.
I'm like this little, a little ascetic sort of hiding out in my little room. Yeah. Writing.
Well, so what the person house body made me think of too was I remember Padre Gotuma in his book In the Shelter talking about like just shelter, right? And like that's what I thought of as living in the shelter. And he talks about like we live in the shelter, and the same Irish word for shelter is shadow, but we live in the shelter in the shadow of one another, And so this is the lens from which we perceive the world, and yet we also, from our own person house bodies, like have a sense of shelter that we provide for one another too. And so thank you for allowing us into your shelter, this day, and for being a part of this conversation. And
thank you so much.
It's just been very insightful, and I just appreciate what you're bringing into the world. And I do hope people will go read the book, because there's some really big plot twists in the book.
There are some plot twists, yeah.
I don't want to give them all away, but you can.
Oh no.
I hope people will go and read them and check them out.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope so too. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time. And folks, go check out the book Girl in a Box, Seeking Enlightenment as a Tibetan Buddhist Nun. Paldrom, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a part of the Radical Sacred community.
In these uncertain times, may you cling to hope and deep connection, and may you work towards living in the spirit of reciprocity with all beings.
Our lovely intro and outro music is Beach Song by the band Saren.
And it's just the two of us here at Radical Sacred, so please help us out by sharing with your friends, rating and reviewing us. Find more of our work on Substack and Instagram.
Remember, you are on sacred ground. Stay rooted.